She asked for it.
You remember? It's gonna hurt so bad. Okay.
For the opportunity to be with you in a work session tonight. We're going to run through the cemetery policies as we are all excited and anxious to go through. Roland's been doing a great job of helping us. We've taken a lot from other cities, and we've merged a lot of different policies and processes. There are some things.
Mark, can I
Please.
get our crew up here by mics?
Is this the time?
And here
Hiding,
comes
no
the bus.
Probably.
Okay.
Grab a couple more chairs.
Rick, go ahead and sit right next to Wendy.
I've got a lot of cemetery jokes over there.
If you feel they'd be appropriate.
What's our new?
Now we're doing it.
Colton, have you ever had a repeat customer?
Brother is.
Yeah, there you go.
Gonna say it depends.
Lots of cemetery jokes I want to use.
So if I could, Mayor, are we good to go?
Yep.
Yep.
So what the mayor just alluded to is his brother is in the mortuary business. And he was gracious enough to come in with the mayor and look at our policies with us and give us his perspective as a funeral director on what those policy implications look like. And we were able to get some very good feedback to help us kind of refine our policies. They're not done. We've taken a first of passes on them so that you can have an opportunity to kind of walk through that. There are some policy issues that we want to kind of hit on. Roland, how many pages is our document?
I believe 7 or 8.
7 or 8? So it's,
Can I just add to that?
Please.
before we get Further down to it, when we met and had this discussion, it's amazing how much stuff goes into this. But I just want to give kudos to staff before we jump into this. You guys have done an amazing job to start, what we were like, it's just simple, dig a hole. Really to the policies, what goes on, everything going on to your staff, to the parks crew, amazing. You guys have done a good job to get us where we're at today.
thank you. Roland, let's go through and let's start hitting some of the policy issues.
Wait, what's your first name, our new sexton?
Colton.
Colton. Oh, that's easy to remember. That's my kid's name. Welcome, Colton.
That's an easy one.
I won't say the T in there. I'll say Colton, but whatever.
Don't worry, she'll start calling you the other kid's name when she's mad at you.
Nikki, this won't go forward.
Okay, go now.
So the first policy discussion that we wanted to have was around public access hours. So what hours would the town be open to the public? The current proposal we have is 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which would be a reflection of city park hours. However, there were some other alternatives that were floated around: dusk to dawn, sunrise to sunset, or having differing winter versus summer hours due to.
I personally like it where, once it gets dark, because in the winter, it's like 6 o'clock. And there's not a ton of, we don't put a lot of lights all throughout, right? I mean, and you're just asking for night games and kids causing problems. So
Maybe
I don't know,
for me,
I actually like the dusk to dawn better, but, and I'm sure the city council would be playing games
Are
up
we-
there too, but
Are we
it's a work session.
gated, right? We're not gated. It's open. So the only way to enforce it is by PD going up there and kicking people out.
Well, they could, but the thing is, if a neighbor, they'll be neighbors eventually.
Sure.
They can give them a call, and then there's something for them to enforce. But if it's 9 o'clock at night, the police won't really be able to do
There's
anything.
no amenities up there, so they're gonna spend a lot of time in the,
But I do know
cemetery.
people do spend time
there's no HOA
in the
amenities.
evenings.
But they like haunted games and.
Oh, I know.
Well, and what we don't want is, kids going up there and doing brodies on the grass and things like that.
Breaking tombstones.
So I'm gonna share, for me, because I had a little brother who died at 12, there's often times that we're at the cemetery after dark. And so that's my concern, is that that's something that we should look at as well, because we don't just stop seeing him because it's 6 o'clock at night, right? Depending on the time of year or whatever, like, we don't care if it's cold, we don't care if it's winter. If it's something that we need to do, we're gonna go see him no matter.
My daughter and friends went and visited a friend who died just this year, like at 11 PM.
Yeah, so the 6 to 10, for me, I feel like makes it so it's easier for us to enforce, but also gives, the people visiting their loved ones a chance to do that
Flexibility.
when they,
But what
Right.
about we're doing it to the exception. You have to look at it like the general. I mean, our bathroom right now at Patriot Park is closed because of why? Vandalism. And we're eventually gonna have a bathroom up here. We're gonna eventually have, headstones, people can take a hammer to them. So I think we're making the police, again, this is why we have these conversations. I think we're making it harder for our police, because if they can just drive by and if they see movement in there, they can jump on it, but they don't have to be like, okay, what time is it? It's 8 o'clock, and then we have, truancy for youth, right, and stuff. As long as they're going from one place to another, they're okay. So there's a lot of issues, but
can we get your opinion on that? Is this what they're here for, so we can ask?
what is Orem's rules?
Orem's is dusk to dawn, but it is very hard to enforce. People like
We're
you,
visiting.
people
The only
like
access
just
is
said,
one
people
road
come
to put-
in, people put solar lights up on
Yeah.
lots, people, there's just so much different variations of how people come and visit graves, depending on cultures, depending on families, depending on
People want to do
loved
sparklers,
ones.
4th of July.
It's all,
But the thing is, it's like any of,
I'm dead serious.
the thing is, like all of our ordinances, you guys, does code enforcement go around and make sure everyone has 2 feet weeds? No. So the same thing, if we have it dusk to dawn, the police don't have to enforce a family sitting around doing sparklers around their headstone. But if this gives them teeth, if all of a sudden at 6 o'clock in December, a bunch of teenagers in there and they are potentially damaging things, it gives the police now an opportunity to say, you are truant, you are where you're not supposed to be, and you defacing property. So it gives them more teeth. Right, because we don't enforce all of our ordinance all the time. And so, like, to your point, like, if someone brings a solar thing and they're having a candlelight vigil, I just did a big candlelight vigil this week. The motorcyclist in American Fork Canyon was my son's friend. He was on the ballroom dance team with my son. And so I get it, why people want to go. But, because the Orem police don't go in there and arrest people who are doing sparklers, they don't.
not usually because the Murdoch Canal Trail runs directly right through that cemetery.
That's true, halfway between the two,
Yeah.
yeah. I ran that trail, actually.
From a legal perspective, dusk or dawn is really hard to enforce. It's so hard to tell in Utah, like, is the sun coming through Provo Canyon? Is it blocked by mountains?
Well, then you can do sunrise, sunset, because that's on a map.
Like, that's why dusk and dawn is hard. to do.
But sunset, sunrise
Maybe
works.
have like winter hours and summer hours.
Why can't you do sunrise, sunset? Because that's on the app. The
Does
sun sets at a certain time, to the minute.
the sun coming through Provo Canyon in the winter?
Sunrise and sunset,
Or
is determined
Nogus?
by the DNR. They publish the date every day,
Okay.
right? You got shooting light 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after.
I don't know. That's always been a weird thing for me to.
So it might be easier to create that enforcement with winter hours, summer hours. Because it's
Yeah, if you
hard, it's
have a
hard to
set
call
time.
dusk, dawn, and sunrise, sunset unless you,
The problem is throughout the 6 months, it slowly gets
I
darker
agree.
and lighter and so.
So if I could maybe bounce back to the current proposal, this is 6 to 10, which is our regular park hours. Where, in general, where's the council? Are you comfortable with that, or do you want to shrink those? Do you want to do a winter hours?
Let's try 6 to 10 for now, and let's have the police go up there and do a drive-through in the winter and make sure it's families and not teenagers playing murder in the dark.
my concern is no one's up there because there's no houses, right? The only road up there we're putting in.
Right.
And so once someone gets up there, who's patrolling that? Police aren't gonna really
Well,
realistically be up there patrolling it.
we are contemplating cameras and things like that for security, because there is only one way in via the road, so
But
we
then
can.
make sure you talk to Kevin, because you're recording license plates, and there's a lot of legislation around that.
Right. But we can have license plate readers and things of that nature, but.
I'm just saying, but that's a whole nother.
Sure, absolutely. So again,
Privacy, because would you want the government knowing that you're visiting?
from a 6 to 10 standpoint, is the council kind of there, at least for starters?
I'm comfortable to start that way.
And then let's see how it works.
Yeah.
'Cause it doesn't mean
I
we
wanna
can't.
keep as much flexibility as possible.
We can
for people
change
to
it.
Visit their loved ones.
Okay, thank you.
But be patrolling it,
Sure.
especially till houses are up there.
And we can report back too.
Yeah, how it's working.
Yeah, how, if it's, I mean, if you're seeing a lot of, you know.
So the next topic is kind of
Yes.
a big one, is weekend and holiday burial services. So the question is, should the cemetery offer Saturday burial services? Now, this is compounded by the fact that we recorded on the plats, you're moving in next to Camp Williams that does firing drills on weekends. And so the
Well, then they
concern.
got a gun salute, they're like really feeling good.
Well, but the challenge that we have is first and foremost, most cemeteries, most municipal cemeteries are not doing Saturday burials, and if there
Is that a
are,
new thing?
it's,
They did them just for an extra fee.
Lehigh, yeah, I had to
you-
pay $75 extra for my mom to get buried on
That's
Saturday.
all?
Yeah, it was only 75.
you can do extra fees, but again, we're gonna be competing with Camp Williams. And one of the things that we wanna make sure that we put into the policy documents is very clear language, that if you choose to do
We
Saturday.
don't control Camp Williams.
We don't, but we also need people to understand when they buy these plots,
It's-
that you're moving in next to Camp
The
Williams.
same thing we do for next to Patriot
Sure.
Park or anything, it's gonna say, you know that there is an active military base next to this facility. The whole point of this was, we wanted it next to there because of the dark sky and quiet neighbors.
Right.
I'm in favor of Saturdays at a fee, because we're gonna have to pay over, you know, we have to pay overtime.
We have to pay overtime.
Now, one of the things that we have talked about, and it won't happen today, and it probably won't happen at the start of our cemetery, but at some point, it becomes very difficult to staff for 6 days in cemeteries, especially, again, some of the other communities have stopped doing those, or they're very much restricting it, and so they're doing much greater fees associated with that to pay the overtime and to bring in extra crews and things of that nature. Not today, but maybe 15, 10 years from now, something like that, we may have to revisit this, because you will experience staffing difficulties with them having to work 6 days a week, oftentimes.
This is only if they have a burial on Saturdays, right?
And that's why now it's probably not gonna be a problem for us, but when we get busier in places like Orem and other places, where staff really just don't get opportunities to take weekends off, because you're not hiring a part-time person for cemeteries, it's the same crew.
Saturdays, especially for like out of town folks and stuff like that, like
Yeah, I
it's,
think we have to offer
we have
Saturdays
to.
first.
I can't, no, I can't, I don't agree with
I think
that.
we should allow it, I don't think we should allow Sundays and holidays.
Jim, what did Randy say about Saturday burials, Saturday funeral
They
services?
tend to be the least attended, because everybody's got kids' soccer games, they got boating activities. So even at the mortuary, they try and encourage them to do other days.
Really?
Plus,
I
a
think
lot
it's
of,
okay, but I don't think not allowing it.
plus not that the sexton is, but a lot of the part-time people that are filling in those Saturdays, they're trying to rush families out of there because they want to close up, they want to meet with their buddies. Families feel jaded. And so his experience as a director, and it's universal across all cemeteries, is if you just don't do it, most people are like, oh, they're closed, we'll do it Monday. They may hold the service for family to come and then graveside or whatever, but that was just his take from everything from St. George to Logan that he's done.
Well, doesn't the current proposal address what we're talking about, though? It's like, hey, it's not typical, but if you approve it,
But I would want it to be approved more than denied.
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying, even though if we allow the sexton, Colton to make that decision, I would want that to be the exception of denying it.
And I'm not saying make the extra fee punitive, but make it worth our while.
I think,
75 does not seem enough to me.
It's got to cover
but
To
right,
cover your costs.
but right now, we will probably have weeks where they have 0 burials.
Correct.
And so they might, Saturday, they just have Tuesday off. So their weekend is Sunday, Tuesday, and then they work that Saturday, right? So I think if it becomes a problem where you're doing burials every day, then I see that as a problem. But like, I mean, a lot of businesses, right? Your weekend is Sunday, Monday, or Sunday, Tuesday.
And I would say my bigger concern is really the Camp Williams firing. I think it's going to be
That
very
doesn't
disruptive.
happen that often, Mark.
Not enough to
I mean,
say
they
not
live
to
right
do
there.
Saturdays.
I
As
mean-
long
Live
as
right
people,
there.
as long as people are aware that we don't control what happens on the.
I mean, you live down south, so you probably don't ever really hear it, but like,
We've got the explosive plants, so
Yeah, but-
we get our share.
but like, right,
But
this
it's-
week
it's rare that we get it up
this
there.
week is a big week. This week is their official time, but they don't
It's not that
do it
often.
very often.
Well,
Or we're not hearing it that often. We used to, we don't
Yeah.
anymore.
right. So again, it's something that we may need to address in the future. So I'm hearing that
Current proposal.
the current proposal is what we're gonna
But
land on.
again, the
And-
exception is denial.
And then the fee structure needs to basically cover the overtime costs of those people.
I don't think it is overtime yet. We need to make sure we look at that because honestly, we're gonna have many, many days in the week where there's no burials.
And they're still
Currently,
mowing lawns.
Currently, but I'm just saying, we can address the overtime
10
and
years
make
or
the
whatever.
fee, I guess what he's saying, don't make the fee $500 right now. That's asinine because we don't have overtime on Saturday. We'll have overtime in the coming days, and so, you know, $100, $150. or
but
something.
I think
part of
we
that
look at what
challenge
the
is,
cost
is
gonna be, then it doesn't feel like a taking. Oh,
Well-
when I buried mom, it was $20, and now it's $600.
But part of the challenge on that is they have to give 48 hours notice per the policy of a burial occurring. So if they notify us on Thursday that they're gonna do a burial on Saturday, we don't have time to flex their schedule for that week.
Can you flex it the next week?
Well, it depends. It depends on how many hours they've worked, because once they go over 40 in a week, it triggers the overtime.
No, because it resets the next week. So your weekend can just be,
Yeah, I hear you're saying.
That's not how the policy currently works, but I understand what you're saying. So again, we're gonna have to just look at that from that standpoint. So I think we're good. You keep believing that. Okay, let's keep going.
oh, that's right, Trump's doing that. huh?
I like,
So,
It's not forwarding again, oh, there we go.
holidays, you guys are good, no burials on holidays, especially like Memorial Day. It's gonna be chaotic, and we shouldn't be doing that. This is one that is, it's tricky. Let us
You're
talk
gonna get
about,
some pissed off people. Oh my goodness.
but here's the challenge we
Little
have.
kids, you're gonna, oh.
Here's the challenge that we have is decorations. For a lot of people, you know, they think, oh, let's go put pinwheels up. It's an operations thing. Not necessarily today, but as we get bigger and bigger, the little shepherd's hook, the little wire shepherd's hooks, when those fall over and these guys run them over, it will ruin equipment. It will, you know, become this object that gets wrapped around the blade and stuff. And so what we're proposing is, like, for example, the current proposal is no vases. So if you've got a flat flat headstone and you've got a vase in it, how much are those vases to replace?
Depending on the style of the heads, I mean, the style of the vase, a cheap vase is anywhere from 100 to 150 bucks. And then you go from brass up to the reds, to the thickness, to the different types of metals. They can get anywhere from 150 to about 800.
I agree on the flat markers for sure.
Now, on the upright markers, we don't care as long as it's within that and it's its own thing. But again, on the flat markers, for these guys to mow, they're just going over things. They're ripping through
Well,
there.
100% makes sure, it makes sense on the flat markers because you're not going around anything. You literally are, you're edging, what, once a month or something? Is that what you do?
Well, it depends on how many flat markers there are and how the edging be taking place. With Orem, we'd edge 6 times a year, and it took us anywhere, depending on the section, 2 to 3 weeks to do one section.
How do you enforce?
But it looks, Orem looks nice.
How do you enforce that? Though? Like, there's no bases and stuff like that.
Orem doesn't have that, they allow vases. The thing, we try and mentor families and give them the knowledge of vases with their headstones, because anywhere you're allowing water to run in underneath the headstone is gonna wash out, it's gonna create a void. Problem of it is, at Orem, we don't have a mini X to dig, we have a backhoe. So when you go to pull across the headstone, even as much as you're trying to avoid it, it creates a void. And
Correct.
trying to even stay off a headstone, you end up breaking headstones.
But what if somebody does bring up pinwheel or something like that? How do we enforce that?
They'll just throw it.
Pinwheels, you pull them as they put them out, and as
Like
you
you
see
said,
them.
after they left, right?
Yep, correct. No, I don't, you don't go up and pull it out from them right there, yeah.
I mean, I'm just,
Here, Junior, I'll take that and just throw it away for
you
you.
linebacker.
The baby died.
what I'm saying is, people that will go there, they probably will still, yeah, I mean,
No, well, I see cemeteries where they're allowed to put things, but it's clearly signs posted, these will be removed, you know, at a certain time or something like that, so maintenance can be done.
yeah, it was.
Well, and there's actually volunteers.
How much-
We need to open up for volunteers because Memorial Day, Labor Day, volunteers will actually come and help clear out the
I
cemetery.
guess that's some of the question here is, without volunteers, how much do we expect our staff to walk around picking up stuff?
But
before we
wreaths,
mow?
all the wreaths,
All the wreaths, all that stuff.
But that's where a lot of volunteer, that's part of our Veterans Committee will have to form that.
And part of the policy is that, you know, when those things get laid out, it's the next time they mow, those things get cleaned up. And so it just depends, you know, on what day it goes out and what day we do it. But what we can't do is have these guys out there taking a fresh bouquet of flowers, moving it, mowing, edging, and then putting it back. There's just too much room for error and
All of
too much.
this is around the flat. This is all this is around, the no shepherd's hook is the flat ones only.
Typically the flat, but even the uprights.
Shepherd's hook would be for upright too.
The shepherd's hook, though, that doesn't affect because they actually can cement it into
If
the
they-
base.
Yeah.
Again,
And so that they're still edging around it. I don't know why we would, I'm looking at my mom's, right? My mom is a
I agree.
bench.
I'm very jaded here. I have to stay maybe out of it because yeah, keep going. Sorry, Michael. I'm sorry.
it's a complicated conversation because as many people are, there's preferences that go along
If you
with
have
it.
if you're vertical on your cement slab, that's where the headstone is. I don't think that we need to regulate. If they start putting shepherd's hook in the grass next to it or tripods and things.
On the flats?
No, like on the upright ones. If they start putting like a tripod and under the grass area, then that is affecting that. But if it's like my mom on theirs that has this thing that flips, and then I can put flowers, it's in the cement base, and it's next to the head thing, and then when I don't have flowers in it, I can flip it and close it. I don't want to be limiting that kind of thing, and like
On
flat-
uprights or flats?
uprights.
Upright.
Okay, so again, on an upright, we're not gonna be touching the vase. It's gonna be there.
Like, and it's the ones that are flat, right? It's not even, it's the recessible one. You were saying on the flat, it can be dangerous because it causes the water issue and your equipment's going over it. So I think that tends to make more sense. But on the upright ones, well, and then it also makes the uprights a premium. And so when people are paying for that, because we are gonna charge more for a lot that has the upright because there's more maintenance involved long-term. But that also allows them to say, if you want a vase, you don't get it on the flat. But if you really want one, you're really set on that, then put a flat in the section that has uprights and put your vase. I mean, like, I just think it needs to be the section because if we have flats in our upright area,
So on the rows that have uprights, we're not gonna allow them to put flats in.
okay. So then I would just say on the uprights, then if it's within your slab, you should be able to have the right to do with what you want there, because there's not like maintenance. The only thing they're doing is removing flowers, because what is it, the policy typically, it's every 2 weeks?
I think it's 7 days.
Yeah, 7 days.
7 days, you guys clear the flowers and stuff. And so,
And along with that, we're not gonna allow people to plant plants and
right, because
vegetation
they
and
don't
stuff like
own the
that.
grass area. They
Right.
own the cement slab and the headstone that's on it.
So basically, you're saying the only thing that they can put on there has to go in a vase that's already there or on the cement that's around like the,
They can leave wreaths, they can leave potted plants and stuff like that. They
nothing can
just,
be in the grass around.
yeah, they can't plant a bush and expect
Or
that
even
bush
put a
to
shepherd
stay.
hook in the grass next to it, because then that's,
See, we can't do that.
well, then you're removing the shepherd hook, then they have to vacuum, and they're gonna have to put it back. And if they damage it, then they'll say, you damaged my shepherd hook. and
Or worse, I mean,
If it's in the cement area,
or we wrap it up around the lawnmower blade and we're.
in their
jacked.
contract, if it's in the cement area, I think they should be.
Again, we just want to make sure the rules are very clear from day one.
Yep.
So that we're not actually, I mean, it's, when you buy, you understand what the policies.
Yep.
Let's see.
Get more expensive for the upright.
The other thing is like, we don't want to encourage people to bring in glass vases that they're just setting on the headstones. You know, those get broken, kids do those things. And again, you know, if someone walks away from their funeral and they leave things, that's one thing, we'll take those away the next time through. But generally speaking, we don't want to have materials that are breakable, you know, being left around.
And I think that's across the board, not just
Right.
flat, but upright is like,
Aren't there markers
Headstone.
that have collapsible vases of some kind?
they do, and like
But those
mine,
aren't, we don't want those either?
Again, when they're mowing, they're gonna have to stop and collapse it for each and every marker that they're going
so
through.
the flat
When one
ones, it doesn't
breaks,
work.
it's us who broke it. Doesn't matter who broke it.
Right, I know, okay.
And
then
that's-
also where he was talking about some of the water.
The
on
water
those, on
can-
the-
Yeah.
it'll get down there.
One of the challenges that we have, and this is just something so that we have it out very much in the open, if headstones get broken, we're gonna get blamed for it, and we're gonna have to bear the cost of replacing those headstones. And so some of what we're looking at here is, what's the long-term implication? If someone does a very, very
Real
expensive
quick,
marker.
Mark, my contract with Lehigh, they were not responsible. I take full responsibility, and if they
Yeah, that's
damaged
part of
it,
it.
that's part of it. You have to, you sign major waivers, and you can try and sue, but it's such a tight contract, it's very hard to win. It
Again-
doesn't mean they can't sue you anymore, I mean, because you
Want
can
to have
still.
that?
Roland, can you dig into that waiver of
Liability.
liability?
Yeah, and we have some pretty significant liability limitation language in the policies and code, so we probably address that, but we can definitely look into it more to see if that's part of the contract that they enter into.
It's the same thing like we did when people move in next to Patriot Park, right? You've got lighting, don't come complaining. You can still sue the city, but don't come complaining yet.
Right.
So I don't know, I guess I just don't want to have a lot of our decisions based on the one or two people in a 4-year period are going to sue us over some damage, but.
Sure.
I want to make sure that we're making our cemetery look as good as, you know, like I actually drove up into Alpine's gorgeous, like you literally feel like you're in a park in England.
Is it private or municipal?
It's the Alpine City one.
With the trees.
Have they sold
It's
out
like a little
there?
trail go up to it.
I believe they've sold out, yeah.
But it still says Alpine Cemetery on the sign.
Yeah.
But they built it, they put in, they designed it really well, like, I mean, there's some really nice cemeteries out there. I want us to be that, I want people in Lehigh being like, I don't care if I lived in Lehigh, I want to get buried in Saratoga.
So, on the policies,
Exactly.
again, these are your policies. We're giving you the recommendations from things that we've heard. Where do you land on these things?
I'm okay with this.
We want to avoid the sterility, that's my only concern.
The what?
This being sterile, like blah. Like nobody feels like this is a place they want to be with their family member.
Right,
And
right.
Oh, he wants them in.
Okay.
We don't want to restrict it so much that it's literally. the
I'm
cemetery
okay
from
with
that
the
bad
no
movie,
vases,
right?
flat mark, all that makes sense to me. I think that we have more leniency on the headstone ones. And I'm okay with
I don't
that.
want to take away people's ability
To mourn.
to make sure that people know that it's their loved one, right?
Well,
And
that
if
people
you're-
were thinking of them.
Yes, and if we restrict it too much, we're taking away with that ability from someone who this is, yeah.
And the
I agree with
policy is
that.
typically to clear all the flowers on a Monday, right, or Tuesday?
That's the hard to also do. You can't pick a day just because you don't know if you have a funeral coming in. You don't know if you have grave markers coming in that day. It's hard to enforce, hey, what day are we gonna mow this week because we have a funeral? We have,
You can mow other areas, but then, because I mean, I've been to.
yeah, in the
funerals,
future,
there's mowing
once it's
on.
all
Only
built
doing
out,
one-
yeah, you can jump around and mow that way, but.
Two
I
and
can
two and a
speak
third.
to the every 7-day thing. It's less of a specific every 7 days. And what we found in talking to some of these other guys is that if we set a day like, hey, 20 days or at the end of the month, then people become reliant on that and they stop cleaning up their plot completely.
So on average, you'll just say, on average, it's once a week.
Yeah, exactly. And then what that does is that just helps people kind of understand, hey, if I don't pick it up, they will, instead of just dropping it off and relying, hey, on the 20th, they're just gonna care about it.
I mean, there's been times in Lehigh, honestly, my flowers were there for 3.5 weeks. Let's be honest.
Yep.
But I was okay with that.
Yeah.
I took out the dead ones and put new ones in.
And there could be times where that happens, on very rare occasions, but we just want to kind of set the example so that we don't have people already in a tough situation getting
There you
frustrated.
go. That's answering this.
Great foreshadowing.
Right. So
Our
again,
conversation.
are you good, like, so for example, like Memorial Day, we'd pick it up on 5 days after the placement, so that would be
Again, why are we being specific?
Yeah,
Because
what-
if there's a funeral 5 days later, you're not gonna wanna be going and clearing out all, can you imagine the optics of a veteran being buried? Because we said that 5 days after the veteran gets buried and we're removing flags on every single spot? That would be horrible optics. I like your idea where we say, don't be so specific, 5 days after placement of a holiday, just say, within a week. And it's 5 days, 7 days, 9 days, we can work around it because I can just see KSL loves us for some reason. And Saratoga Springs hates veterans.
Fox 13 loves us.
So can you explain this to me a little bit? So basically, if you put something there and 5 days later, it's gonna be removed.
Like a flag or
Or say
something.
like you put.
Within a 5-day
Something,
period.
yeah, so you put something there for somebody's birthday, 5 days later, it's removed.
well,
This is
but
for holidays.
Well, and most.
Holidays, is it for everything?
It's for everything.
Yeah, that's what
For
I'm asking.
everything, but like with funerals too, when they put out, say, natural flowers, you have all these extravagant bouquets, easels, you've got the casket spray, everything that they usually put out, those only usually last for a week, but even in the winter, the summertime, when it's hot, you're in the triple digits, they don't even last 3 days, and they look dead and they look crappy, and most of the time,
So, yeah,
Instead
so-
of it sitting there being an eyesore, it's like, let's just get rid of it
But,
type
so,
deal.
when I sort to you guys, but I'm not sort to the family, right? So that's my concern. So say you have a teddy bear sitting by.
Well, it's kind of a mixed. I mean, if I walked up and saw a heap of dead flowers.
I was just
like,
gonna
why
say,
are they
I've been
taking-
yelled at for
I'm not
leaving
talking about
flowers on
flowers, I'm
Facebook
talking
for
about
too.
objects in general, because that's what we're talking about, right? So if there's a teddy bear on a headstone, like if it's been there for 5 days, you remove it.
What we've done in the past with Orem, if it's on the headstone and it's out of the mowway, especially decorations and stuff like that, like objects, we've ended up leaving objects. But flowers, we've always,
Yeah, flowers is not.
flowers, pinwheels, we've removed that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah.
But with the
But
flats, but with the
with teddy bears
flats,
though, if they become faded over time and then they're starting to look, I
well,
mean.
sure, you can,
That's when we usually get rid of them that way.
you can say a time period, but the flat ones, you can't put
No, I'm talking.
teddy
about
bears and stuff, right? So that's, but that'll be very clear in the policy that if you have a flat stone, you don't get to put a teddy bear or their favorite castle, plastic castle or whatever. I personally think we should say, instead of having a set day, this is to the, we were just talking about this, I think you should say within a week.
For your discretion.
Or per the sexton's discretion, because if there's major rainstorms and stuff, then you want to clear things out because it's starting to get bad, or.
Well,
It
you're
also
gonna.
gives them the ability, if that teddy bear is special, then it gives them an opportunity to come back and say, oh, you know, we're gonna leave it for a few days, but we don't want them to take it.
Yeah.
I think it clears everything.
Okay,
So on average.
So did you get that, Roland? Okay, next.
I'd rather him.
So, which one are we on? Should city limit the number of burial rights an individual can own? What we don't want to do is have speculation, and so, again,
There was a website called Grave Trader where you bartered.
Well,
You could come in and buy it.
Really?
no, I mean, this happened actually,
It's out of business
Know
now.
about that.
what's the
That's
famous,
interesting.
the famous cemetery in Salt Lake where the general authorities and a lot of the
Salt Lake
prophets.
Salt Lake City.
Well,
Lake
there's
City.
another one that's the Larkin or something.
Larkin does
There
all
was
the.
big speculation there because some of the big, I think McKay got buried there, and then everyone just came in from all over the world and were buying up. I think it should be based on if you can show that you have 9 people in your family, you should be able to buy 9 if you have 9 kids. I don't think we should say you get to choose which 4 of your 9 kids get to be buried with you, but.
So,
Though, like, my concern is in the initial phase. Right?
I just think if you, like, you should be able to buy a plot for all of your family.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just thinking like the initial phase where it's like super limited spots right now.
So does it make sense?
I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think we're gonna sell that many. but-
Does it make sense to say Saratoga residents can buy one for each member of their household? Out of city people
Per death,
can buy per death, yeah,
per event, yeah.
per event.
I
Whatever you wanna
actually
call
like
it.
that. I actually think then that's helping the residents have priority, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to not,
right.
I
So,
think part of this though is covered, Mark, because when you explained it to me, they can't, like, I couldn't take it and sell it to Chris.
Right.
At a premium. It goes to the city for what I paid for it.
So essentially, what we're trying to do in the policies, and we haven't quite got there yet, but we were basically saying that you can use that right, but it's not necessarily transferable.
This shouldn't be an investment.
Well, then that takes away all of
it
that.
could be transferable to immediate family.
Yeah. to
Correct.
your family.
Correct, but fundamentally, what we're trying to get away from is you buying
25.
10 plots, and then you turning around and selling them, and then having people come in, and you sign it over to them, and they're not a relation of some sort. But proving relationship is very, very difficult, right?
Yeah, it's very, I mean,
It's subjective.
so this,
Called Great Girl.
my grandfather bought a plot and he ended up getting buried with his second wife. And we turned around and sold that and helped pay for his burial. But you're saying we would only be able to sell it back to the city?
We would buy it back from them minus.
The current rate or the old rate?
What, the old rate that they had paid.
See, I call BS on that. I don't like that.
Well,
I think the city should have to pay the current rate because we're gonna turn around and sell it. The city should not make, we should not be able to make a profit. off
but the money that we're making is going to pay back for a perpetual care fund. So we're going to be taking money out of perpetual care fund to buy those back. So
Then we're
again,
gonna turn around and sell it, and we're gonna make a profit, and we will have benefited from all that money that was made, plus the additional.
so again, this is kind of the policy discussion for it. You're hitting on these critical things. Do we want to,
I
like,
think we limit how many they can buy based on their family membership, but then they're able to sell. That would eliminate this, and if they can sell them, if they don't use them.
But again, we're going to then be getting into the speculation. Go to KSL.com and look up cemetery plots.
I know, I literally, Mark, I just sold 2,
Right.
like 3 years ago,
But do we want to be able to
at the
control,
current rate of that cemetery.
do we want to control as a city what those transactions look like? Or what we want to avoid is the cemetery getting bought out because people are doing that with the idea of speculation. We're trying to say, hey, if you're a resident of Saratoga, this is for you. If you're a non-resident, we'll have a non-resident fee.
Why don't we just make it non-transferable?
For 2 years.
The city will buy it back at market rate,
At the current rate, and then I'm okay with it.
But
Current rate,
at the current rate, yeah.
not at the original rate.
Well, or the
Because we're gonna
rate
turn
of,
around and sell it for current rate.
Yes,
Right.
that's what Michael's point is, right?
Current resident rate.
Current resident rate, yeah.
Yeah,
Because what you don't want is me to buy it and then sell it to an outside resident going, you know, it's like $300.
But I definitely think a family of 8 should be able to buy 8 plots if they want to. Yes,
Or 4 double deeps.
yes.
I agree.
Go double deep.
I think you should be able to buy for your immediate family, and I think you should, if you have to sell it, you have to sell it back to the city at current market rate.
how's the rest of the council feel?
I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that too.
yeah.
Okay?
I can live with it.
Plus a, transaction fee.
Well, and that's,
You gotta do the recording and stuff.
Yeah, you
we have to deal with that. And so
Is there
part
a
of that.
recording involved? We're not selling a piece of land.
We have
Selling the right
to,
to a
we are
term.
selling a burial right, and we have to track that burial right as if it's a property right.
Okay.
And so there is quite a bit of time and energy. And the other part of this is so let's hypothetically say they don't use those burial rights. The state code basically goes out, and I think it's 60 years?
Correct.
In 60 years, we can question and say, hey, you haven't used this, your burial right is forfeit, we have to go through a public process and things of that nature. But essentially, as we become an older cemetery, we're gonna need to be clawing back those burial
It's
rights.
100 years out.
It's 60, state code.
No, it's 100 years before we run out of plots with this huge lot, this whole cemetery.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, Nikki, I didn't.
Before, but in 60 years,
Sorry,
we can start clawing
So
back.
I,
But in 60 years, we'll be climbing back, but we won't need to because we won't have a limited amount of space. We'll still have plenty of lot
so
plots.
I would just say you sell it back at current market rate less a transaction fee to
Yeah.
cover the
A
cost.
reasonable
That
transaction.
way, then when, whatever it is, then when
Yeah.
we sell it back to someone else, it's a net zero. We're paying for the staff, the repapering and everything.
Sure, agreed.
So that,
How do most cemeteries do when it comes to, how many you can buy?
Good question. Depends on the
The
cemetery.
difference? Okay.
I've sold at Orem, less than 6 weeks ago, I've sold $50,000 worth of plots when I was there. in
Yeah,
one
well, when my
transaction.
little brother died, we bought 4, right? Because we want to make sure
Yeah,
that.
but this family bought a block and a half. So that would be 18 plots.
Because they're going to put a bigger,
No, they're only flats at Orem.
I know next.
the new section,
Yeah.
it's only flat.
The whole cemetery's only
My
flat.
family's
Orem only is
8
flat.
at a cemetery in
Yeah,
Suffolk.
no, we're,
And
my
there's
aunt's.
already a bench there with my name on it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, like, that's.
Without the death date.
No, there's a bench with my parents' name and all their kids'
Uh-huh,
names.
Yeah, oh, your kid's name.
I sit
Mine's
on
on my parents.
yep.
Okay, I think you got your feedback.
okay, so do we want to limit, it's the household, how do we measure that? How do we prove that? How do you want us?
Why are we still set on proving it? Like, I think we're gonna have some people that might take advantage of that, but I feel like for the most
If
part,
if the sexton feels like they're manipulating it,
Yeah.
show say you can ask for birth certificate.
like, I feel like we're, I don't know.
Again, we're
You can just say.
exploring, we're
For
trying.
household, for residents, if you need more, we just
Then
need
let's
to know
let's
that's
do
resident.
something else.
And then
yeah.
give the sextant the ability to
Oh,
make
you
the
just laughed at us,
exception.
what's funny?
We're gonna make you all powerful. Sultan, sexton.
Do I need to start asking for birth certificates? Absolutely.
So maybe a limit like 10 or whatever, and then if they can prove they have 12 kids, then you can make it.
I think,
10 is a really big number.
well, our average household currently is what?
We're
0.25.
4.14.
I'd say limit 6 unless you.
where you look.
See, I like what Wilden's saying,
One,
limit
two.
6 unless you prove otherwise.
Okay, limit 6. Is that where the rest of the council?
Yeah, I'm
I'm
fine
good
with
with
that. And then he can, if you have 8 kids or whatever, you can get more.
Okay, so let's go to the,
Numbers, well, whatever you
You
feel
run
like.
5 elections.
Roland, let's go to the next one. All right, double death burials. So they actually went out on Monday, Colton's first day, and had the contractor dig a test hole to determine whether the soil conditions could sustain double burials. Now, double burials are complicated because your first casket is getting buried about what, 9 feet?
Well, 12 to 14.
12 to 14?
And with the,
This is an easy one, Mark. This absolutely makes sense. You have to bury it double down. If you choose a double down, first dead goes to the very bottom. You have to make the decision on the first dead done.
So here's the challenge on that. Let's say this person buries only at the higher depth.
Yep.
At a single, and then if we are asked to do a double deep one right next to it, this could slough in on that, and it becomes a safety concern. Now, we've written into the policy that the sexton has the ability to govern whether or not the conditions are ripe for a double burial, but the question is do we just bury everyone at that deeper depth from day one so that it allows for that second burial?
Charge for the double depth.
Again,
Open that grave site.
it's gonna be a little bit more expensive for the depth.
By singles, you're charging them to benefit the neighbor who's got a double. If it's costing an extra $300 to dig a whole double depth for a single, that's not.
See, my,
But the collapse issue is a real issue that we want to be careful of, because again, I mean,
That'd be awkward.
I don't want to be crass, but
Do we have a
once someone's,
double depth section? Or are we allowing it anywhere?
well, that becomes the policy discussion of, do we bury everyone at that first burial at that double depth so that there's always the option for a higher
So I
depth?
guess, yeah, so they don't have to have somebody on top, we just bury them deep enough that they can, right? Is
They
that the-
can, and then if they choose to do that at a
Yes.
future
Then it's not
point,
gonna cause like the.
correct.
Colton, what's the extra cost for double depth?
really, it's double plus
right?
20% on top of for most of double deep cost for an opening and closing. So you take what your single
every-
depth would be, double it, and then usually it's 20 to 25%.
That's in
People who are buying
Right.
singles, I don't think that's
Why
fair
are
to charge
people,
them.
why are people
agree
gonna
with that.
wanna buy double?
Just, usually it's because of all the liabilities of what can
Extra
happen with
shoring,
a
extra
14-foot hole.
showers.
There's only 2 companies that I have found working at Orem. We looked, me and my old boss looked for 3-4 hours. This was 5 years ago, there might be more now. But there was only 2 companies that made shoring for graves. They're 45 inches wide, your graves are 42 inches wide. You start having graves on top of one another, that shoring is not gonna work. So from that way.
I know that my family cemetery, because we just talked about this Sunday. When you use a site, you have to declare, but the first time it's opened,
If
Whether it's gonna be a
or
double.
if it's
not.
gonna be double or not, yeah. And if you choose to not be double, then that double right internment you purchased is used.
So that's what this current proposal is then.
How popular are doubles?
When I worked at Orem, the only section we did double deeps on, we did it on the veterans section. That's the only area we allowed double deep burials on, and then we had a collapse open up. I've lost 3 headstones in it, and a vault was starting to teeter into it. My boss at the time said we were done, we were no longer gonna be responsible for that. And then the policy and everything was changed after that.
I'm gonna listen to the
But,
expert.
and it was very popular for the veterans section after that. That's how all the veterans were buried in Orem. They were all double deep.
Purpose for double is
Save money.
parent and a child, right? Or
No,
No, it's.
Husband and wife?
Husband and wife,
Husband and
usually.
Husband and wife do a.
Usually husband and wife.
and certainly it could be for a parent and a child
Okay.
as well, but.
Only other cemetery that I know that is consistently doing double deeps on a weekly is Camp.
What I understand from looking at the numbers, really, it's not much more expensive to just go with 2 plots than it is to pay to open the double depth.
Correct.
You're not saving money.
Yeah, why
I think
are
we should just
trying to-
abandon
why-
this
Are we
double
trying to
depth
save space? Why are we offering?
Well,
double?
But
it
it's,
doubles the capacity.
Right, but
it's,
do we-
it's all in the pricing structure. If we only allow single depths, then we will rip through our inventory much quicker. If you encourage the double depth, then it allows for a greater capacity and a greater utilization.
So why don't we say phase 1 is it's a double depth phase?
That'd be the phase that we're on in.
Right.
What, I can't remember what Randy said about it.
He just said most people, when they see the cost, don't think it's worth it
Yeah.
because they can buy 2 plots and it's not much more.
And that's really the fundamental question on pricing. So Dan Cable, who designed our cemetery, he basically had a higher price set for the first burial. And that essentially put the higher price into that. And then the second burial was about half the cost of the original burial.
So can we like start without doing doubles and
Well,
then maybe the next section, maybe like
We
maybe we have
could.
to start doing it?
Start doing double, but Colton, maybe you can answer. I know my brother, when he was selling headstones and stuff, he's like, people do the double death and they find out their headstone can only be this wide instead of this
Yeah.
wide over two. Do we lengthen headstones? Now we're driving and breaking them? If we stick to a size, they get frustrated because they're like, I can't get everything on that.
Yeah, all the writing. and
Colton
stuff.
doesn't
writing.
on
The problem with lengthening your headstones, you have to straddle those stones when you're going to backfill, not
They
just
break.
for our equipment. For our equipment, you're gonna have vault companies, monument companies.
Yep.
That, when you keep them to that width and the average of what they have, it's done on purpose so they can go behind the dualies. Once you lengthen them past that, the dually hits it, and like I said, you don't know if there's a void under there. We try and do everything that we can in our process to control the earth and compact
I think-
as we can, but
I think in section
there's
one.
things out of your
single.
control.
I think section one, single,
Single, and if
and
we
the
need to
next
start doing
phase.
doubles, then maybe we do.
Well, if we start losing inventory quickly, we could just say this entire new section all has to be buried
Has to
at
be
the
double.
double depth.
And the
so that
first
we
interment,
avoid
the first interment has to be.
And everyone does.
Yeah.
And
Nobody gets
It
to
might be the
choose.
third phase, we just kind of have to watch it and kind of see what happens.
But I think
It might not
phase
be-
one, I don't want to deal with this shit.
So I know we look at 20 acres and we go, that's going to be an infinite supply. It's going to go much faster than we
Yeah, we're
probably
still
think.
in Phase one.
Colton, how
and the-
many acres is Orem?
Orem is 40 acres.
40 acres?
We are 40 top, well, not me anymore. They are 40 top, 22 top, and then 38 down below.
And how
Or not
many
38,
they've
sorry.
been putting residents in?
Yeah.
They've been using it
When are they
for
projecting
40
it
years,
sold
right?
out?
They're, well, currently they're doing a CIP project in the lower right now. There is, the irrigation was put in and it wasn't designed to go through the buffers of the plots that are currently there. So there are irrigation routes that are currently down there that are just totally blocked out because I put the whole new 2-inch irrigation down in there to get the volume to everything that it needed to be, and they just, they didn't reroute it like they were supposed to originally. And so now they're doing a CIP project to move it, and it's gonna accrue another 1,400 lots just to move all the irrigation
I mean,
itself.
I think the option is, we're 70,000 residents, not all of us are gonna die in the next 5 years.
All of us are gonna be
Correct.
buried here.
If we're worried about burning through inventory, and we start to, we could just restrict it to, you need to be a resident to buy
I
a
don't think we
plot.
start with that for sure.
Isn't that what
Well,
we're
and,
saying now?
and again, that's part of the conversation on the number of lots that we sell and things of that nature. There's some unique things that we've been looking at, and I don't know do we deal with infant burials in this?
Not in these.
So if I could, around the edge of the cemetery, there are some half lots that are infant burial lots. And the spaces that are immediately adjacent to, we want to, by policy, say, if you bury an infant, then we will preserve the space right next to it for perhaps parents. And the problem is we want to also give them maybe a 5-year window to buy those plots so that they have the choice of being buried next to their child.
Like that.
Now, the problem is, the problem is we're gonna have to also then say, so if you've got the infant lot and the parent plot, you don't want to let them reserve 7 or 8 spaces because now you're blocking off the other infant spots so that they wouldn't be adjacent
Well,
to
they
the
would
parent.
know they're making that concession,
So,
buy extra plots.
yeah, so we're gonna have to consider what that looks like. And maybe it goes infant, adult, 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 so they can go into the cemetery along that. But we want to be careful that the policy that we're putting in place preserves those edge plots right next to the infants so that a family member can have that spot immediately adjacent. Does that sound like a policy you'd be interested in us pursuing?
Well, how does that have something to do with the double burial? How does that,
So, again, if there was an infant, a double burial would allow both parents to be buried right adjacent to the infant.
I don't think that's necessary. I just feel like if phase one, nope, but then if we need to look at it again in phase two, then we start looking at those burials.
So we're gonna have to then adjust the edge burial plots so that instead of them taking 3 or 4 or 6 spots that are adjacent to infant spots, that they would get 1 spot next to that, and then on the next rows, they could buy additional plots.
Nearby.
So they'd be
Can't have
nearby.
it right next to it.
Mayor,
Because again, if we have,
So if he has it pulled up, are you okay if I tell
Sure.
him what you're, like physically, what you're talking about?
what she's pulling up really quick,
Chronically, not physically.
So for instance, you see
Yeah, so
these
there's a
three in
I
the
watched the
lots.
notes earlier,
So he's saying like you would
Oh,
want those two
instead of
doubles.
just the, oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you
Oh,
see? Yeah, that's
Oh,
why
that
I was
makes-
like, let me
I was
show it
thinking
because
was
it makes
this,
sense.
and then it was, yeah,
So
yeah.
like, for instance, right here you have 3 infant
Right,
plots.
yep.
And so you would want, then you'd need a double burial behind it.
If you want both parents want to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it might be.
Does that make sense what we're trying to
I
kind of
still
shoot
want to push
for?
to do doubles, but.
Mayor, just to add to it, in speaking with Highland does do double dips and they actually encourage it. They've been open for.
Highland does?
They've been open for 20 years and they're almost half sold out. So that's why they encourage the double dip.
Highland.
I think we could do phase 1 single, and
I agree with
when we
that.
open phase 2, we could say, you know, this one's double that option.
It's
then
2
charge
acres.
accordingly.
Okay.
You
Very
work
good.
with that, Colton?
Colton, what's
No,
your
I'm
opinion?
just saying, with the soil up there, it's perfect for double deep.
Is
I mean,
it?
The other stuff, everywhere else I've seen down in Orem, they wanted to do double deep in the new lower, but we're pulling out rocks the size of this table and we're hitting them with the backhoe, and it takes anywhere for just a single grave. I can usually dig a grave in about 10, 15 minutes.
It's the price, I don't.
But
think-
with the grave in the lower, I'm anywhere from 45 to 50 with that
Orem.
size of rock in Orem.
So,
Why they said no to doing double deep
So
there.
you would like us to do
I
double
think
deep?
it's a good idea to do double,
I think it's a really good idea. It'll prolong the life of your guys' cemetery.
but the first interment has to go,
the first term has to go deep.
It has to always go down to the, for double deep.
Then I'm okay with it then. And
If he's
I'm
saying-
listening to the expert. I want to.
We have, it's
Why
a,
didn't you say this in the beginning? This was gonna be so much shorter.
he's not even been with us for a full 48 hours. He doesn't want to step on your
All the
toe.
personalities.
I'm just totally teasing. I'm just totally teasing.
See,
Well,
Rick
so-
the side saying, you guys take the darts, I'll be over here to pick up.
And so what Colton's talking about, the test hole that was dug, we had a really nice rich clay layer that allows us to
Fall clay
really,
up there.
yeah, it allows us to get that. Now, if we were, say, on Lake Mountain and there was, nasty collapsible soils and things like that, it would be a different conversation.
So, but then we're limited to the one headstone, like this tinier headstone with the double burials, right? Like, I can see that being an issue as well.
Well, they're just gonna have to know, their headstone's
Well-
limited to that size.
With the tinier headstone, if they actually go what they call a full granite headstone, especially if it's a flat headstone, there's plenty of room for them to do a companion-sized blast on a companion headstone.
Depends on what you want to put on there. Again,
But if they do the traditional granite piece, 24-inch granite with the concrete border around it, yeah, it's pretty tight to
because then
bore
we're
in
adding
it.
cost.
They can go vertical though.
So,
In the vertical
Raised
area, yeah, the upright area they could, but in the flat area, it'd be
But the
flat.
flat areas, they're all small.
So I think we've kind of tackled this. Are we comfortable with double burials or,
It's
okay,
not.
let's move on.
In the one area.
Wilden wants to be buried upside down.
face down.
Face
So
down,
now we're
with his butt in
requiring,
the air
no,
to be
wait,
used as
now
a
we're
bike rack.
requiring a double burial on every lot?
Not requiring it, but again, we would just bury the person at the double depth.
But he'll have to make adjustments.
And
Single next to a double, I get it.
so this is kind of why,
That's why we have to hire him.
right. So, again, as we get into the pricing, which is our next conversation here, when we get into pricing, that will help us know how to model the cemetery. Because,
that's what I'm having a hard time with.
So you can get a single.
But you still have to pay the double price.
No.
Yeah.
again, we
You
can,
have to pay the double burial price even though you're only burying one person in it to dig it, right?
and again,
I thought you said we were gonna sell singles.
But you don't have to pay the second.
you don't have to
You
pay the
have
second.
You have to pay the extra money to get the double dip.
But again, let us work on pricing between now and our next
But I'll
meeting.
just answer that. But you have to pay, right? That's my concern is that you're not paying now for a single hole, you're paying for the double hole, whether you're only burying one person in it or not. right?
Well, that's only for the logistics of trying to keep it safe and keep them all at the same depth. Because if you do, you could do the single depth, but like, you could do a single
No, but
depth.
what I'm asking is the price does go up because of the double dig. right?
What we're gonna look at is the pricing structure, and we're gonna come up with a pricing structure that doesn't disincentivize the first internment. Because again, if you're charging twice as much for the first internment, that's disadvantaging that policy. But if we have a policy that's the first burial is, let's just say $1,000, I don't know what it is, but let's say it's $1,000, and then the second burial is maybe $750, you've incentivized the more efficient use of that space.
Okay.
So again, I can't answer your question. We need policy direction so we can
The fact
build
that we know it's
that.
gonna be more expensive, but how much we don't know that yet.
Right.
But we-
Yeah, and So this is really kind of the fee structure. Can you open up the other slideshow for us? And we're going to kind of move through this one a little quick. I've got a specific ask. Dan Cable, who did the original layout of the program, or of the cemetery, he came up with some pricing, and it's more comparable to private cemeteries. He did great work. We're trying to say, is that right for the market? Now, we have a challenge, because in Eagle Mountain, I think they charge $500 for a plot. And then you've,
Cemetery?
I just had that same thing.
so
I love you all.
we also have, like, for example, what's the plot price in Orem?
For, well, they have
Base
two
food.
prices, they've got an upper and a lower, but the lower is 1770 for a resident, and then 2232, 42 for a non-resident.
Okay, so we've got a whole range of pricing structures that we'll show you here, but there's a couple different price points that come in. And first is, do you charge different based on the location? The upright headstones are more, those plots are more expensive because it's going to be a little bit more maintenance and risk for the city. The lot type, are we talking a child infant? Are we talking, single adult space? Are we talking measurements, headstones, things of that nature? And then you've got cremations. And one of the policy things that we've kind of bounced around is, do we want a plot to be preserved for casket burials and incentivize the cremation garden for those people that are being cremated? And so we want to set up our pricing so that people don't say, hey, that plot's only $1,200. That's more expensive than being interned in a columbarium kind of a thing. And so it's a disincentive to use that for the urns and the cremations. And so we want to set our pricing structure so that if someone chooses to do a cremation, the cremation garden is the more affordable option than them buying spaces that would limit something.
Well, then they're
Because,
burying an urn in a huge space, they don't need it.
right, and so it's the
And
economy of space.
cremation has become much more popular.
Sure.
Because, especially in our area, because the church made it not a crime to be cremated.
Sure.
1%.
I was gonna say, it's more than tripled
Really?
since I started.
51%.
More than tripled now.
It's more than tripled. When I first started back in 2012, I'd do 1-2 cremations a month. Last month, when I was still with Orem, we did 16.
See, it's because it's not a sin anymore.
Yeah, it's cheaper. So.
Saying in the next 30 years, it's gonna take
It's basically the same.
So this is kind of the metrics, if you would, or the flow chart of how these different prices come in. Obviously, we're going to have to look at kind of elements. We want it to be affordable, but we also want
How
to,
many do we allow on a cremation tower?
we have some columbariums that are up to 96. The biggest one we have is kind of a group columbarium, and it allows for 96 burials or urns to be in it. And so you've got some families, you have some family columns that will do, 12? I was looking at the numbers. And so some are just double headstones, and it's a simple double headstone. So again, we're trying to get these prices. Go to the next one, please. So these are the prices that are associated with the different types. And again, these are the averages, and I'm sorry you can't see that. These are the averages. So the median price for a single space adult burial is $1,100. For the non-resident rate, it's $1,750. The average is closer to, we'll call it $1,270, and then the average non-resident is more like $1,840. And the max is $1,900 and $3,000, with the minimum being $550 and $1,000. And so these are the rates that are from the local cemeteries. We went with city cemeteries, so there's a wide spectrum of prices. One of the things that we were cautioned about is you don't want to necessarily be the cheapest, because then people are going to shop for value, and you'll have people from Salt Lake County and others that are just looking to get in here, because it's the cheapest place where you can do a burial. And so we want to make sure that our pricing is competitive. We don't want to outprice ourselves, but at the same time,
Median price point.
we want to find a price point that works well for our community. And so again, we've got child infant pricing, we've got cremation pricing, we've got uprights versus flush versus columbariums. Again, we can share these more with you, but what I'm going to be asking for tonight is, can I get 2 council members that would be willing to work with us over the next couple of weeks on the pricing schedules? Jim and Michael? So that we can work through the pricing, so that we can come up with pricing that is both fair, but it's fair, but at the same time recoups our costs and make sure that we're putting enough money into these endowment funds or these perpetual care funds.
Yep.
So that we remain viable. Again, I'm looking out 50 years, and what I would hate to have happen is that we underprice everything right now to be the cheapest value, but we've put ourselves in an unsustainable position where future residents are having to subsidize cemetery maintenance for people that were died 2 generations ago. We want those perpetual care funds to be enough and healthy enough that we're not bloated with cash, but healthy enough to make sure that if things get broken and we are responsible, we have to replace those things and we're not bleeding the general fund coffers
My feedback.
for those kinds of things.
Back to you guys on this, is I'm okay being even above the average
With the middle,
to have a nice facility.
yeah, to make it nicer.
Yeah.
And if you get extra funds, you can always add things,
And on that,
gazebos and things.
as a council, I would like some direction. We can go a couple different ways. Do we try and recoup all of our capital costs for the cemetery right now? Okay, great. Then we're not counting that cost into the pricing, but now it's the perpetual care and the operations and maintenance of it. And we're planning for that future of how we grow and expand.
I still want to look at, for when we sell these at Splash, maybe that first 60 days, 90 days, people who buy, there's a discount over our normal rate and
Early
price will go
adopter.
up.
Early adopter.
Early adopter, because like I was telling you, Mark, if I put $4,000 into this perpetual fund and I don't die for 40 years, that money's going to, every 7 years, double. That's more valuable than an empty piece of dirt up there for 20 years till it's filled. So just to kick off that fund, I would like to see us do some sort of early adopter for residents only.
We're encouraging you to buy, not to use it.
Yeah, buy them, not to use them right away. You know, but extend that, like we said, to current staff.
And I think
Whether they
we're-
live within or without the city, they can have resident
We're
pricing.
into this 20 acres so cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be looking to
Make
recoup our
money.
cost of improvements.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah.
Let's go forward. That's a sunk
Perpetual
cost.
fund.
Perpetual fund.
So as we build future phases, again, the big cost on this upfront purchase was the road getting up there, the utilities getting up there. We think future phases are going to be more economical, but again, we're trying to model that.
I don't want to recoup all of our costs. We'll work with you.
Yeah, so we got direction. Let's go to the next slide.
Just while we're here, if the council's good with early
I love
adopter,
early adopter.
What?
an early adopter.
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So the green fees here represent the kinds of opening and closing fees and how the fees will be based on how we've got it structured. So, a double depth burial, first burial is always the lowest one, second burial costs, things of that nature. We've talked a lot about these things, but again, these are the things that we're going to be considering. Then the inconvenience fee, again, we should not be doing any burials on holidays. That's just
It's
a
just
very.
bad form.
Yeah, it's bad form. We don't want to be, necessarily making staff come in and work on, say, Memorial Day or
Well,
Veterans
but
Day.
the cemetery's full of patrons they don't want to
You're right.
be impacted.
We don't want to conflict those holidays. So,
When holidays have an impact though, Colton, like shutting down for Memorial Day,
The two
You're
biggest
shut for a week,
holidays, I was gonna
basically,
say,
right?
two biggest holidays in the cemetery world. You'd think the second one would be Veterans Day. It's not. It's Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Everybody comes to see Mom's grave. That's usually the first busiest
That's when I show
right before Memorial Day. And then Memorial Day happens, and you usually have the week before Memorial Day to prep, get everything that you can get done in that cemetery to get it what it needs to
Looking
be
good.
to look good. And then the week of Memorial Day, you have that weekend, and everybody usually starts, at least in Orem, they start decorating Friday afternoon. And it goes all the way from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to Memorial Day. You have the whole crowds, everybody decorating on Memorial Day, and then you have that whole week after that of people leaving their decorations up.
But you're new-
And then the Memorial Day cleanup is always the Monday after Memorial Day. And that's when usually cemetery crews go out and they get rid of everything so they can mow and take care of and start the maintenance back onto the cemetery grounds.
as far as opening up graves and stuff, you've got a gap there.
You have to, no, after Memorial Day, they do burials during that week. It just takes that much more time. You have to have a crew that you can go out and move, say all those decorations out of the way. You pull them up into the one row, your crew backs in, and then it's dominoes of putting them back after you get done with the vault guy and everything. It's a logistical.
It's
during
impressive.
the week of
But it's the
Memorial.
right thing to do. I actually just had a thought, and Colton, when you see in a lot of cemeteries, they have those medallion points that they put the flag in, and the veterans groups come for Memorial Day and Veterans Day, and they put those in. How does that work with the flat? You guys don't allow those?
Usually at Orem, we've never allowed stuff to be stabbed in around the grass just because it gets in the way of the mowers and maintenance. So anything stabbed in the grass is not okay.
So they can't, the veterans groups can't recognize veterans if they're in a
No,
flag?
we allow them, but usually what they do is they either, one, they have something that they can stand it directly on the headstone, like a vase, and put it in, that they can
Put
put
the
on the
flag in?
headstone, or there's some kind of little planter box that they're able to put on the
They can put the
headstone.
flag in that.
Yeah, and then they can put the flag in it that way.
What's like the cost, so if somebody has been buried in Lehigh, they wanna move to Saratoga, is that cost?
That actually is included in here, and that would be disinterment fees. And so, again, we don't want to do that. It's not a.
Want people to come back to our cemetery?
No.
Well, so disinterments are tricky. You have to bring in a funeral director, and so there's a chain of custody.
So I want
Right.
I want to find out how we're handling that.
Right. We will allow it. We will allow it. Like, if it's a double burial, you can do it if it's a single burial, but if you have to remove this body to get to this body, that gets very complicated. Usually vaults and things like that will crack, and so we would be recommending, and I can't remember how the policy's written, is it disinterments are with court orders? And,
Ones that would only be court order, and then the other ones, as long as they follow the process that's outlined in the.
right, and the process requires them to be a funeral director, so that when you disinter the body, the funeral director has custody of that body until it gets to the grave, things of that nature. And so that's the policy, it would allow for that.
We don't need a weekend at Wilton's movie made.
Well, when we visited the cemetery in Salt Lake, they told us about that one guy who had moved his wife
Four times or
Four
something.
times.
Right. So, again, that becomes kind of that.
Well, just make the fee
process.
enough where it
Every time you
covers
move, you
us.
brought up.
Exactly.
I
So
mean, just make the fee strong enough.
all of these are different types of fees that come into these conversations. Let's go to the next slide. And so again, the opening and closing fees, the resident, non-resident fees, deeper, non-resident, resident, double deep, upper. Again, we're going to look at all of these different pricing structures and try and come back with something fair. You've already given us some advice on that. Next slide. The inconvenience fees, these are the things that we would be looking at for, like, for example, we talked about having two burial times, basically 10 o'clock and, 1 o'clock? Burial times. Because one thing that's really difficult is if you sometimes will get families that will linger around a long time, and we push people into late evening burials. You've got to have enough time in the morning to get the vault set and the holes dug and the things prepared. And then once the funerals are over, you have to be able to, lower the body into the vault, close it, bury it, and basically get it back to a safe condition. So again, holidays, this is showing the non-resident, resident fees. We're not going to do any burials, so those go away for our math. This is just showing what other communities have done. And then the after hour and the Saturday burials are, we've got some comparative numbers that we can. And then we've got the disinterment fees, to your question earlier. Again, we've got those, and we'll be looking at what those look like for us and how we want to go forward with those. And I believe that's it for those. So again, Michael and Jim will be working with us on those fees. We'll be playing around with those. And again, our hope would be that we come back with a fee schedule. We'll hopefully send it to you early enough that you can have time to review it before. And then if you have substantive questions, we'll try and tackle those and make sure that when we get here, we do need to have the fee schedule adopted before Splash. So our ideal would be that we adopt the fee schedule next council meeting. If we can't, then we can start setting appointments at Splash, and then we could adopt it the second meeting in June. But again, we would be setting up appointments. We're going to do everything we can to have that back to you next meeting.
That's 3rd of June.
Yes.
Splash is the week after that.
I already have a meeting set up with the consultant tomorrow to go through and start doing first pass based on the direction that's been given tonight. And so then we'll move into having them start reviewing the fees the next week.
Like what?
I don't know that we ever had Wilden, did we? Is there any other questions that you all have Any comments? Did we miss anything? We will circulate the draft policy that we have so that you can start reviewing that. And then, oh, these are the policy questions. We're going to send you the policy document so that you can go through that immediately, and then we can circle back on any questions that you've
It
got
was
with
a
that.
riveting 2+ hour discussion. And staff.
Are you kidding?
Not that I've ever heard of, no.
So,
Let's do it.
Do it.
I think you're gonna need an excavator for that because.
I think start standing them up.
I was gonna say, yeah, you, with that depth, you're gonna need an excavator, cause the extension on a backhoe ain't gonna get that deep.
And we appreciate it. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Mayor and council,
Thank
thank
you to
you.
everybody else as well for being.
Thank you guys, we appreciate it.
Yep, we're done.
Thank you very much for your time and patience.